What if the whole thing was personal from the beginning? Not professional. Not strategic. Not about workplace safety or PR campaigns or contractual disputes. What if underneath every lawsuit filing, every leaked text message, every aggressive media narrative, the actual driving force behind Ryan Reynolds' behavior in this case was something much simpler and much more human? Jealousy. That is the theory that stopped a room full of seasoned Hollywood attorneys mid-conversation this week. Celebrity lawyer Mark Garagos and his co-host Matt Murphy were joined by comedian Heather McDonald when she dropped an observation so specific and so uncomfortable that the lawyers did not laugh at it. They leaned in. Heather McDonald went on this podcast with Mark Garagos and Matt Murphy and brought up this theory that Blake Lively may have genuinely fallen for Justin Baldoni while they were filming. Not necessarily some full-blown affair, but maybe there was chemistry there. Maybe Ryan Reynolds noticed it. Maybe things got weird behind the scenes. And the reaction from those lawyers was priceless because they weren't laughing at the theory. They were excited by it. Like they had finally heard something that explained the chaos. One of them literally said, "Wow, this makes sense." And when you lay everything out, the late-night voice memos, the rage in the Tribeca meeting, the alleged nice guy character, the scorched earth legal strategy that backfired spectacularly, it starts to make a very specific kind of sense. Welcome to the Marquee Report. This is the story of how Blake Lively's lawsuit became one of Hollywood's most catastrophic PR miscalculations, and why the man who was supposed to help her may have been the one accelerating the disaster. Let's get into every detail. Let's start where the conversation started, because the jealousy theory is not just gossip. It is an analytical framework that explains specific behaviors that have never fully made sense under any other interpretation. Ryan Reynolds' behavior throughout this entire thing has always felt so extreme. Like this wasn't just a husband defending his wife. Ryan Reynolds looked furious, personal, vindictive. This man allegedly mocked Justin Baldoni, publicly created that nice guy character everybody thinks was aimed at Justin, and reportedly screamed at him in that Tribeca meeting. That's not normal Hollywood PR drama behavior. That feels emotional. That distinction matters. There is a specific texture to professional PR strategy, calculated, deliberate, measured in its escalation. And then there is the texture of something personal. Something triggered. Something that bypasses strategy entirely because it is operating from a different place. Heather brought up that voice memo Justin Baldoni sent Blake Lively at like 2 o'clock in the morning. That deep late-night voice memo where Justin sounded weirdly intimate and emotional while talking to Blake. The internet absolutely lost its mind over that recording because people were saying he sounded flirtatious, romantic, almost seductive. Even people who hated Justin admitted the voice memo sounded intense. And Heather basically said maybe Ryan Reynolds heard that memo and completely spiraled. Think about what that moment would actually look like in real life. Ryan Reynolds, one of the most famous and commercially successful actors in the world, listening to a late-night voice message from his wife's director. Emotional. Intimate. 2 in the morning. Whether anything physical happened or not, whether the relationship was ever anything beyond professional, the perception of intimacy in that recording is real. And perception is what drives emotional responses. Here's the thing that still bothers people. There has never really been evidence that Ryan Reynolds genuinely believed Justin Baldoni assaulted or traumatized Blake Lively. That's the weird part. The public narrative became Justin harmed Blake, but then every piece of evidence that came out made things look complicated, not criminal, not horrifying, just messy and emotional. Messy and emotional. That is the most accurate description of this entire case. And it maps perfectly onto a jealousy origin story rather than a workplace safety origin story. Now let's talk about the specific moment that should have been Blake Lively's strongest evidence, and instead became the moment her entire legal narrative started visibly unraveling. Blake Lively originally claimed Justin Baldoni improvised intimacy during a dance sequence where supposedly no audio was being recorded. Blake's complaint literally described Justin leaning toward her neck and saying it smells so good, as if this was some shocking inappropriate moment that nobody would ever hear because there was allegedly no sound. The allegation was specific. The framing was specific. The implication was clear, a director exploiting a moment of perceived privacy to behave inappropriately toward his lead actress. And then Justin Baldoni released the dailies. Once the audio came out, people realized Justin Baldoni was openly directing the scene in real time. He literally told Blake what he was about to do. He said he was going to remove his hat, lean in and try to kiss her. And Blake responded casually like it was completely fine. Blake's legal team had to quietly change the wording in their amended complaint. Suddenly it became, well, technically audio existed, but it wasn't meant for the film. And people immediately noticed the shift. It felt like the story changed once they realized the footage existed. That shift, from no audio existed to audio existed but it was not for the film, is the kind of change that does not go unnoticed by judges. Or by juries. Or by millions of people watching a case unfold online in real time. The judge reportedly pointed out that this was a romantic movie scene between two characters falling in love, not some random inappropriate encounter in a workplace hallway. Blake's team tried arguing there wasn't supposed to be intimacy in the scene, but audiences were like, wait, isn't this literally a romance film? The answer to that question is yes. It is literally a romance film about a complicated love story. The director directing intimacy in a romantic scene is not a scandal. It is a job description. And the moment audiences grasped that, the moment the dailies made it undeniable, the public narrative around Blake Lively's claims began its long and still ongoing collapse. And then, while everyone was focused on the settlement drama and the daily coverage, something quietly dropped onto the court docket that almost nobody talked about. And it might be some of the most revealing material this entire case has produced. Text messages between Blake Lively and Jenny Slate quietly dropped. And these messages are some of the most revealing things we have seen yet. Jenny Slate and Blake Lively were genuinely talking to each other like two girls hyping each other up in a high school group chat. The amount of love bombing in these messages was unreal. They were praising each other so aggressively that it almost felt performative. Jenny Slate starts telling Blake Lively that her performance broke her heart and that she hopes Blake is proud of herself for her beautiful work. Then Jenny immediately pivots into fishing for compliments about her own appearance, joking about whether she looked ugly on screen, and Blake jumps in instantly saying, "Unsubscribe, you are breathtakingly beautiful, no joke." Blake literally starts telling Jenny Slate that everyone audibly gasps whenever she appears on screen because she's so stunning. That exchange reads like a performance of friendship rather than friendship itself. The specificity of the compliments. The immediacy of the validation. The theatrical register of everything being said. These are not the words of two people who have known each other for years and are comfortable enough to be real. These are the words of two people performing closeness for each other. But then the conversation takes a genuinely interesting turn. In the middle of all this praise, Jenny Slate casually mentions that Colleen Hoover seemed frosty toward her during the event they attended. And immediately Blake Lively responds saying that Colleen Hoover's personality always made her feel disconnected and even spooked. Spooked. That was the word Blake Lively used privately about the author whose book she had just adapted. The author she spent months publicly praising in interviews. The author she posed smiling next to in countless promotional photos. Blake Lively spent so much time publicly acting like she and Colleen Hoover were best friends during the movie promotion. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Blake was privately texting people saying Colleen made her uncomfortable and that she never really connected with her. That friendship clearly wasn't real. And then one by one the dominoes fell. Colleen Hoover deleted Blake on Instagram. Jenny Slate distanced herself. The carefully constructed circle of public female friendship that surrounded the It Ends With Us promotional campaign dissolved almost completely once the lawsuit made it unsafe to stay close. That pattern, the gap between public performance and private reality, is the thing that has damaged Blake Lively's reputation more than any specific legal claim. Because once audiences see it in the text messages, they start applying the same lens to everything else she has ever presented publicly. Here is the piece of this story that ties everything together, and that the Blake Lively promotional machine worked very hard to keep out of the public conversation. Blake's texts about the movie itself were maybe even more revealing because Blake admitted she was pushing her own emotional interpretation into scenes that Justin Baldoni apparently didn't agree with creatively. She specifically mentioned a scene where Lily repeatedly says "I love you." And Blake explained she changed the emotional direction because it was inspired by something her mother experienced. Blake basically admitted she was reshaping scenes emotionally because she thought her interpretation was better. That lines up perfectly with all the reports that Blake Lively tried taking creative control away from Justin Baldoni during production. Remember all those stories about competing edits of the movie, different cuts, Ryan Reynolds getting involved, the power struggle behind the scenes? This text exchange makes it sound like Blake genuinely believed her version of the movie was superior. But according to reports, Justin Baldoni's version still ended up being the final cut with only minor adjustments, which probably frustrated Blake even more because she clearly wanted influence over the emotional tone of the film. So what we actually have, beneath the language of workplace safety and sexual harassment and PR smear campaigns, is a creative dispute between a director and a star who both believed they understood the film better than the other. A dispute that escalated. That got personal. That brought in Ryan Reynolds. That brought in WME. That brought in lawyers. That brought in the New York Times. That brought in federal courts. And that, according to a growing number of people following this story closely, never needed to be a federal case at all. The legal consequences of this miscalculation are significant. But the commercial consequences are the ones that will follow Blake Lively the longest. Business publications are openly using Blake Lively as a warning sign for entrepreneurs and brands. There was an article talking about how the Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni drama allegedly destroyed over $100 million in brand value. And whether those exact numbers are accurate or not, the reputational damage is obviously real. Before this lawsuit, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds were marketed as this fun, lovable Hollywood power couple. Ryan had the funny Twitter personality, Blake had the fashion girl image. Together they felt untouchable. But the second this legal fight started and the internet began dissecting every interview, every clip, every leaked message, the perception shifted hard. Blake Brown Beauty massively underperformed after the controversy exploded. There were claims that projected brand value dropped dramatically. Some stores reportedly started clearing products out. People online were even posting photos of clearance stickers covering Blake's name on product displays, which honestly looked terrible optically. Clearance stickers over her name on the shelves of stores she had negotiated placement in. While her legal team was simultaneously filing documents claiming hundreds of millions in reputational damages. The gap between those two images, the damages claim and the clearance sticker, is the gap that defines what this lawsuit actually accomplished for Blake Lively's commercial brand. And here is the detail that has Blake Lively's team the most nervous about what comes next. Justin Baldoni reportedly refused to sign a strict NDA during settlement discussions, which means Blake Lively may have thought this nightmare was finally ending, only for Justin Baldoni to potentially start speaking publicly himself. That's the real reason people think Blake's team pushed so hard for the silence. Because if Justin eventually tells the full story himself emotionally, personally, directly to the public, this entire thing could become even more humiliating for Blake and Ryan than it already is. Nobody cares anymore about another carefully worded legal statement from Blake Lively's team. People want to hear Justin Baldoni actually speak. Not through court filings, not through leaked documents. They want the real emotional version of events from his side. That interview has not happened yet. But the absence of an NDA means it can. And everything about Justin Baldoni's behavior throughout this case, the restraint, the silence, the refusal to enter the media war personally, suggests that when he does speak it will be deliberate, measured, and devastating in its specificity. The less someone talks during a scandal, the more valuable their first big interview becomes. Justin Baldoni has been not talking for 18 months. Here is where everything stands today. Blake Lively probably thought this lawsuit would strengthen her image publicly. She genuinely believed people would rally around her immediately and Justin Baldoni would quietly disappear from Hollywood. Instead, the exact opposite happened. Justin Baldoni became this weird symbol online for somebody who survived a massive public takedown attempt, while Blake became a cautionary tale about celebrity PR backfiring in the social media era. Court cases end. Public opinion doesn't. And that's the part Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds probably underestimated the most. The trial has not even started yet. The testimony from both sides, live, under oath, in front of a jury, has not been delivered. The verdict has not been reached. And yet the reputational verdict, the one that matters for careers and brand deals and public goodwill, has already been handed down by the only court that operates in real time. What started as a lawsuit meant to define the narrative ended up being consumed by it. And the man who was supposed to disappear quietly is the one who might get the last word. This has been the Marquee Report. Subscribe and hit the bell. The trial starts very soon and we will be here for every single development. See you on the next one.